The Alpha King made love to a human Omega, unaware she could become pregnant. Mist curled around the roots, and the scent of wet earth mixed with the faint perfume of night-blooming flowers. In this world of magic and mystery, few dared wander into these woods alone, and fewer still dared to cross paths with the Alpha King, whose name alone could bring kingdoms to their knees. Yet, Alara, a human Omega, walked among the trees with steady steps. She was small, fragile in appearance, with hair the color of chestnuts and eyes that reflected both fear and courage. As a healer living on the outskirts of the kingdom, she had always kept her distance from the affairs of kings, clans, and magical beings. Life had taught her caution, but tonight curiosity and instinct had drawn her deep into the forest. She paused beside a silver-barked tree, listening. The wind carried a strange, deep sound, a growl low and urgent. Her heart quickened. She had heard tales of rogue beasts that roamed the woods, magical creatures untamed and dangerous. Few survived encounters with them, yet she felt no choice. The whispers of the forest seemed to urge her forward, warning her, guiding her. Kale, the Alpha King, moved silently through the same woods, his presence commanding the air around him. He was a figure of raw power, tall, broad-shouldered, with eyes that gleamed like molten gold in the dim light. His steps were deliberate, each one leaving an almost imperceptible trace of authority. Tonight, he hunted not for sport, but for survival. A rogue beast had threatened the borders of his kingdom, and Kale would not allow it to continue. The paths of hunter and healer crossed in a clearing, bathed in the silver glow of the moon. The beast, a shadowy figure with eyes like burning coals, lunged at Kale, faster than thought. He barely had time to react before Alara stepped forward, chanting words of old magic she barely understood, and a burst of shimmering light erupted from her hands. The creature yelped, recoiling, then vanished into the shadows. Kale's golden eyes locked onto Alara. She stood there, trembling yet resolute, her small frame glowing in the moonlight. He had expected fear, awe, maybe even weakness. Instead, he saw bravery and a strange, compelling presence that drew him closer. "You saved me," Kale said, his voice deep, commanding, yet touched with a rare note of wonder. Alara lowered her gaze, heart pounding. I didn't mean to. The forest, it told me. Her words faltered. She had never spoken to royalty, let alone the Alpha King, yet here she was, standing before him, feeling the weight of destiny pressing down. Kale stepped closer, and the air seemed to hum around them. "The forest speaks to you?" he asked, intrigued. Few humans possessed such attunement to the wild magic. Most feared it, but she harnessed it, even unknowingly. Alara nodded. "It warns me, sometimes guides me. I never expected it to save anyone." She swallowed hard, realizing she had not just saved herself, but the most powerful being in the kingdom. Kale studied her, sensing something deeper, something ancient stirring within her. "You are no ordinary human," he murmured. "There is strength in you that I do not understand." The moonlight shifted, casting a silver glow over their faces. Alara felt an unfamiliar heat in her chest, a pull she could not name. Kale's gaze was intense, commanding, yet not cruel. It was a gaze that seemed to pierce through the layers of her soul, seeing her fears, her hopes, and the untapped power she carried. "You are far from your village," Kale said. His tone held both curiosity and command. "Why risk these woods alone?" Alara hesitated, then answered truthfully. "I follow the forest. It called me. I felt something tonight, something I cannot explain." Kale's lips curved in a rare, almost imperceptible smile. "Then perhaps the forest chose wisely." For a long moment, silence stretched between them, broken only by the rustling of leaves and the distant call of an owl. The world outside the forest, kings, politics, rival clans, seemed to fade away. All that remained was this fragile human, standing before a king who had never known weakness, and the unspoken bond that had begun to form. Without warning, Kale reached out, placing a hand lightly on her shoulder. The touch was firm, yet careful, acknowledging her humanity while stirring something primal in both of them. Alara's breath hitched. She knew the stories of alphas, of their dominance, their strength, but she also sensed an unspoken restraint in him, a recognition of her will. The forest seemed to respond to their closeness. The mist swirled, the trees whispered, and a strange warmth spread through Alara's body, as if the very magic of the woods approved of this meeting. She took a tentative step closer, drawn by a force she could neither name nor resist. Kale lowered his voice, almost a whisper. "You are not like others. You feel more deeply, and that is dangerous in our world." Alara looked up at him, meeting his gaze. I am not afraid." The words surprised her. She had always been cautious, wary of power, yet in Kale's presence, fear seemed to melt away, replaced by something more compelling: connection, curiosity, and an unspoken understanding of shared destiny. Kale's hand slid from her shoulder to brush a strand of hair from her face. His touch was electrifying, sending shivers down her spine. "You do not know the weight of what you are saying," he murmured. "Humans fear the power of an alpha. Most would run, but you." His gaze lingered, intense, searching. "You stand, and I cannot look away." The moon rose higher, bathing the clearing in silver light. Time seemed suspended. In that moment, the forest, the Alpha King, and the human Omega existed in a world apart from all else. A connection had been forged, not just of fascination, but of destiny. And then it happened. A moment of unguarded closeness, a surge of emotion and magic. Kale drew her into his arms, not with force, but with inevitability. Alara felt the world tilt around her, the boundaries of fear and safety blurring. Their hearts beat together, the forest holding its breath, the night itself acknowledging their union. It was brief yet powerful, a spark of intimacy, a binding of fates. Neither spoke, for words could not contain what passed between them. The connection lingered, deep and unshakable, and something stirred within Alara, a warmth in her belly that felt impossible, magical, and yet undeniably real. Kale stepped back slightly, his golden eyes searching hers. "You are extraordinary," he said softly, as though confessing a secret to the night itself. "I have never met one like you," Alara, trembling but steady, whispered, "and I have never met one like you." The forest seemed to pulse around them, a silent witness to what had occurred. The rogue beast's threat had vanished, yet a new, unseen force had awakened. Something had begun within Alara, something neither she nor Kale could yet understand. As they parted, Alara felt a strange heaviness in her chest, a warmth spreading to her core. She stumbled slightly, and Kale caught her, steadying her in his arms. "Are you hurt?" he asked, concern flickering in his eyes. I'm fine," she said, though uncertainty gnawed at her. The warmth in her belly felt different from anything she had ever known, intense, alive, and impossible. Kale's gaze darkened, not with anger but with thought. He did not understand the magic that had begun to weave itself around them, the consequences of their encounter, or the bond that had silently formed. Yet he knew one thing: Alara was no ordinary human, and the threads of fate were tightening around them both. The night deepened, shadows stretching long and strange across the forest floor. Kale finally released her gently, stepping back with the grace of a predator who knew when to pause. "Stay close to the village," he commanded softly, "and trust nothing but your instincts." Alara nodded, her mind spinning, heart racing, and a quiet, unnameable fear nestled beside excitement. She watched Kale disappear into the shadows, the Alpha King returning to his kingdom, leaving her alone yet irrevocably changed. As she turned to walk back through the trees, her hand instinctively pressed to her belly. A spark of life, or something far more mysterious, stirred within her. She gasped softly, the realization dawning too quickly. Something had begun, something she could not yet understand, and it would change her life, and perhaps the world forever. The forest whispered around her, carrying secrets, warnings, and the promise of destiny. And in the distance, Kale's golden eyes burned bright, watching, sensing, waiting. The castle of the Alpha King, Kale, rose from the jagged cliffs like a sentinel over the kingdom. Its towers scraped the clouds, and its walls were carved from black stone, etched with ancient runes of protection. Within these halls, power and fear walked hand in hand, and every whisper could be a dagger. Alara had never imagined herself inside such a place. The cold grandeur of the throne room, the gleam of gold and silver, and the distant echo of servants' footsteps made her heart race. She had been brought here after her encounter in the forest. Kale had insisted on her protection, for rogue forces knew of her presence and her unique gift. She moved cautiously, her hands brushing along the carved walls, feeling the hum of magic that lingered in every stone. Her mind was a tangle of thoughts, fear, awe, and a strange excitement that refused to be ignored. She was not accustomed to power, and yet here, surrounded by it, she felt a pull she could not explain. Kale entered silently, his presence commanding the room even without a throne beneath him. His golden eyes scanned her, sharp yet unreadable. "You must understand," he said, his voice deep and steady. "This place is not safe for a human, even one as gifted as you." Alara met his gaze. "I can learn," she said, surprising herself with the steadiness in her voice. "I can adapt." Kale studied her for a long moment. Few humans dared speak with such resolve in his presence, and fewer still could maintain their composure. He felt a pull in his chest, a tension between the weight of his crown and the stirrings of his heart. "Perhaps," he said at last, "but learning will not protect you from what is coming." The court was a realm of whispers and shadowed glances. Nobles and supernatural beings moved like predators, each with agendas hidden behind masks of loyalty. Alara sensed their eyes on her, some curious, some wary. She knew she was an outsider, a human in a world where power dictated worth. Yet she also felt a strange strength rising within her, as if the bond with Kale had awakened something deep and unshakable. Kale guided her through the halls, explaining the ways of the court and the rules that governed it. He spoke of loyalty, honor, and the dangers of unchecked ambition. Alara listened intently, absorbing every word. She sensed the tension in the air, the unspoken rivalries and alliances, and the subtle threats that lingered in every corner. But even in this court of power, her thoughts often returned to the forest, to the night when she had stood before the Alpha King and felt a connection that defied reason. A warmth in her belly reminded her of that night, a quiet, pulsing reminder that something had begun, something neither she nor Kale fully understood. Days passed, and Alara began to understand the rhythms of life in the castle. She trained in the arts of healing and protective magic, learning to sense danger and respond to it. Kale watched her progress with a mixture of pride and caution. He could not ignore the feelings growing within him, the pull of desire tempered by the responsibilities of his crown. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson, Kale led Alara to a secluded balcony. The wind tugged at her hair and the distant cries of birds echoed across the cliffs. "You have changed," Kale said softly, his gaze fixed on the horizon. "Since the night in the forest, I feel different. The court, the kingdom, it all seems smaller compared to the force that brought you into my life." Alara turned to him, her eyes wide. "I feel it too," she admitted. "A connection I cannot explain, and a fear that I might not be able to control it." Kale reached out, brushing her cheek gently. "You are stronger than you know, and yet there are forces in this world that will not allow this connection to exist without challenge. You must be prepared." As he spoke, a sense of unease settled over them. The Alpha King's court was not merely a place of ceremony, it was a battlefield of power. Rumors had begun to circulate, whispers of a curse tied to the royal bloodline. It was said that any child born of an alpha and a mortal human carried immense, unpredictable power. Some saw it as a blessing, others as a threat that could topple kingdoms. Elara felt her pulse quicken. Could it be possible that the warmth in her belly, the stirring she had felt since that night, was connected to this prophecy? She dared not speak the thought aloud, afraid of the consequences, but fear and hope intertwined in her heart. Kale, sensing her unease, took her hand. "Whatever happens," he said quietly, "we face it together. You are not alone." Before Elara could respond, the doors to the balcony burst open. A courtier, pale and trembling, rushed forward. "Your Majesty," he gasped, "a rogue faction approaches the city gates. They know the forest secret, and the human Omega is the target." Kale's golden eyes narrowed. "Prepare the guards and bring her inside. She will remain under my protection." His voice brooked no argument. Elara's heart raced as she realized the danger was no longer abstract. The prophecy, the whispers of power, the unknown forces, they were coming for her. She had believed the forest was the only threat, but now the castle itself, the very heart of Kale's kingdom, was in danger. As they hurried through the castle corridors, Kale's hand remained at the small of her back, guiding and shielding her. The court watched in silence, awe and fear mingling in their eyes. Few had ever seen the Alpha King show such care for another being, and none had seen him show it for a human. That night, in the safety of Kale's private chambers, Elara reflected on the events of the day. Her mind was a whirl of questions and emotions. She felt drawn to Kale in a way that transcended fear or attraction. It was as if their fates were entwined by invisible threads, threads that could unravel or strengthen the kingdom itself. Kale entered quietly, his presence filling the room. "You must rest," he said softly. "Tomorrow we plan for what is coming. You are no longer merely a healer, you are a part of this kingdom's destiny." Elara looked up at him, heart pounding. "And if I cannot live up to it?" Kale knelt before her, his eyes locking with hers. "Then I will bear the burden with you. Strength is not measured by the absence of fear, but by facing it. And you have already faced far more than most could endure." The night stretched long, and Elara found herself torn between wonder and dread. She had glimpsed the power that connected her to Kale, and now the dangers of the world pressed in from all sides. She could feel the stirrings of life within her, the warmth and pulse that hinted at a new, unseen force. The castle itself seemed alive, the walls whispering of secrets and betrayals, of curses and prophecies. And in the darkness beyond the towers, the rogue faction moved silently, their intent unknown but deadly. As dawn approached, casting pale light over the stone battlements, Kale and Elara stood together, gazing out over the kingdom. The air was thick with anticipation, the calm before a storm that would test courage, loyalty, and the bonds of the heart. Kale's voice broke the silence. "Tomorrow, the court will learn of your presence. There will be questions, and not all will welcome you. You must be ready." Elara nodded, determination and fear mingling in her chest. "I will be ready," she said, though uncertainty lingered. She knew the path ahead was perilous, yet something deep within her, something awakened that night in the forest, gave her courage she had never known. The first light of morning touched her face, and she pressed her hand to her belly, feeling the faint, pulsing warmth that reminded her of the night she had met Kale. She did not understand it, could not name it, but she knew it marked the beginning of a destiny far greater than herself. Kale placed his hand over hers, a silent promise of protection and partnership. "Whatever comes," he said, "we face it together." And as the castle doors opened to greet the new day, carrying with them whispers of prophecy, power, and danger, both Kale and Elara felt the weight of what was to come. The court, the kingdom, and forces beyond their understanding would soon collide, testing the strength of their bond and the depth of their courage. The castle gates had fallen behind them like the closing of a world Elara had never truly belonged to. Kale and Elara moved through the forest once more, but this time their path was not one of chance. It was exile, forced by the danger that now pursued them. The rogue faction had struck, a force hungry for the power that Alara carried unknowingly. The hidden sanctuary they sought was not far, yet the journey was treacherous. The forest seemed alive, twisting and turning in ways that confounded the senses, and magic lingered thick in the air. Alara clutched a small satchel containing her limited supplies, her heartbeat echoing the urgency of their flight. Kale walked beside her, his presence both comforting and commanding. He had assumed the role of protector fully, yet the tension in his shoulders spoke of the burden he bore. To the outside world, he was the Alpha King, invincible and untouchable. But here in the shadows of the trees, he was a man grappling with fear, responsibility, and the stirrings of a feeling he had never admitted even to himself: love. "You must stay close," Kale said quietly, his golden eyes scanning the shadows. "They know more than we think." One misstep and his words trailed off, but the threat was clear. Alara nodded, though her mind was torn. She wanted to be brave, to fight alongside him, yet fear gnawed at the edges of her courage. And beneath that fear, there was the warmth in her belly, a growing, pulsing reminder that she carried something extraordinary, something that made her both a target and a beacon. The sanctuary revealed itself as they reached a clearing surrounded by ancient stones, carved with runes that pulsed faintly with protective magic. A waterfall tumbled nearby, silver in the moonlight, and the air hummed with a gentle, alive energy. "This place," Kale said softly, "has protected my ancestors for generations. It is hidden, even from those who might seek it with malice. Here, you will be safe for now." Alara stepped forward, feeling the hum of magic through the soles of her feet. The warmth in her belly stirred again, as if responding to the sanctuary's power. She realized that the connection she felt to Kale was intertwined with the magic surrounding them, ancient forces acknowledging the bond and perhaps the life within her. For days they remained in the sanctuary, the outside world fading to distant echoes. Kale taught her the ways of the supernatural realm, how to sense danger, how to wield protective magic, and how to listen to the forest that had guided her once before. Each lesson deepened their bond, not just through shared purpose, but through quiet moments of understanding, trust, and unspoken longing. Alara learned quickly, her natural intuition guiding her, and Kale watched her progress with a mixture of pride and wonder. Few humans could adapt to the rhythms of the magical world, and fewer still could stand with an alpha without faltering. But she did, and each day she grew stronger, both in skill and in confidence. One evening, as the stars pierced the velvet sky, they sat by the waterfall, the sound of rushing water mingling with the gentle whispers of the wind. Kale's gaze lingered on Alara, his thoughts unspoken but clear in the intensity of his eyes. "You have changed," he said finally. "Not just in skill, but in spirit. I see a strength in you that surpasses fear, and yet I sense doubt." Alara looked down at her hands, tracing the lines of her fingers. "I feel different," she admitted. "Since the night in the forest, something has awakened in me. I do not understand it, and I am afraid of what it means." Kale reached out, placing a hand over hers. His touch was steady, grounding, and she felt a rush of warmth that spread from his hand to her chest. "You are carrying a gift," he said quietly, not naming it, yet the words carried weight. "A force that will change the world, and it is tied to us whether we understand it or not." Alara's breath caught. The thought of what he meant, the life growing inside her, the prophecy whispered in the halls of his castle, filled her with both awe and fear. She had never known such power, nor had she imagined that her life could be bound so closely to someone like Kale. Days turned into nights, and their bond deepened through quiet conversations, shared tasks, and moments of vulnerability. Kale revealed fragments of his life as Alpha King, the weight of duty, the loss of allies, and the loneliness that came with his power. Alara listened, her empathy bridging the gap between human and king, and in turn she shared stories of her own life, of simple joys and hidden fears. Through this exchange, Kale began to see her not as fragile or weak, but as a partner, someone whose courage and heart could stand beside his strength. And Alara began to understand that Kale's dominance was tempered by honor and care, not cruelty. Their connection was no longer fleeting. It was a bond forged by circumstance, trust, and the stirrings of something neither fully understood. But even in the sanctuary, danger loomed. One night, a figure cloaked in shadow appeared at the edge of the clearing, unseen by the pair but close enough to sense their presence. This emissary carried news from the rival Alpha clan, a warning that the child within Alara, if born, would be a force powerful enough to tip the balance of the entire kingdom. Alara sensed the approaching threat before Kale did. The hairs on her arms stood on end and the warmth in her belly pulsed in response to the danger. She whispered, "Kale, someone is coming." Kale's eyes narrowed, golden light reflecting the rising tension. "Prepare yourself," he said. "We may have to fight, and I cannot allow harm to come to you or what you carry." The shadowy figure revealed itself at the edge of the clearing, a scout from the rival clan, silent, swift, and deadly. Kale moved to stand in front of Alara, his body a shield. The air crackled with tension as the scout advanced, and Alara felt her heart pounding in rhythm with the magic surrounding them. Yet in that moment of imminent danger, something extraordinary happened. The warmth in Alara's belly surged, a pulse of energy that radiated outward. The runes on the sanctuary stones glowed brighter, the waterfall shimmered with silver light, and the scout froze, sensing a power far beyond their understanding. Kale's eyes widened. He had felt the stirrings of magic before, but this was unprecedented. Alara's life and the life within her had awakened in a way that could not be ignored. The scout retreated silently, their mission abandoned in the face of the unseen force. Kale lowered his guard slightly, turning to Alara. "You," he began, but words failed him. The connection between them and the power she carried was undeniable. Alara looked down at herself, unsure, frightened, yet filled with a strange sense of awe. I don't understand," she whispered. "What is happening?" Kale cupped her face gently, his thumb brushing across her cheek. "It does not matter yet," he said softly. "What matters is that you are safe and that we face this together. The world will not understand, but we will endure." Days passed in careful preparation. Kale trained her in defense, and together they explored the sanctuary, discovering hidden chambers, magical wards, and secrets long forgotten. Their bond deepened, tempered by shared danger, trust, and the quiet understanding that the life Alara carried was central to the fate of the kingdom. And yet, even in moments of calm, the tension between them simmered. In the quiet nights, they would sit by the waterfall, speaking in whispers, their hands brushing, hearts beating in unison. The pull between them was magnetic, undeniable, yet restrained by the knowledge that the child and the prophecy was at the center of their connection. One night, as the moon rose high, Alara felt a strange vision, fragments of the future flashing in her mind. She saw a child, golden-eyed and radiant, standing between two worlds. She saw armies clashing, kingdoms trembling, and Kale standing beside her, their bond unbroken despite the chaos. She gasped, clutching her belly. Kale, sensing the sudden shift in her energy, knelt beside her. "What did you see?" he asked, concern and awe in his voice. Alara shook her head. "A glimpse of the future. It is terrifying and yet beautiful. The child, it is destined for something extraordinary." Kale's eyes softened, a rare vulnerability breaking through his otherwise stern demeanor. "Then we must protect it," he said quietly. No matter the cost. The night air thickened with magic and tension. The sanctuary had shielded them for now, but the outside world, the rival clans, and the weight of prophecy loomed ever closer. The forest trembled with a quiet, ominous energy as dawn broke over the hidden sanctuary. Mist clung to the trees like a living veil, and the distant roar of approaching forces echoed through the valley. The rival Alpha clan had discovered Kale and Alara's location, and they were coming, not merely to confront, but to claim what they believed was theirs by right. Kale stood before Alara, his posture unwavering, though tension etched every line of his face. The Alpha King, feared and revered, now faced a danger unlike any he had known, yet his gaze softened as he looked at the human Omega standing beside him. Her hands rested lightly on her belly, and though she seemed fragile, Kale saw strength that no army could match. "Alara," he said, his voice calm yet charged with authority, "today we face them. You must remain close to me. Whatever happens, we face it together." Alara's lips pressed into a determined line. "I am ready," she whispered. Though fear lingered in the corners of her mind, the warmth in her belly pulsed like a steady heartbeat of courage. The life within her, Kale's child, though neither of them had fully acknowledged it, was a force they could not ignore. It had already begun to shape their destiny. The ground trembled as the rival clan appeared over the hill, their numbers vast and formidable. Warriors clad in dark armor, faces hidden beneath shadowed hoods, moved with lethal precision. The air crackled with tension, magic, and anticipation. Yet Kale's presence was a beacon of authority and strength. "Hold your ground," Kale commanded, golden eyes blazing. "They will not take her, and they will not take what is ours to protect." Alara stood by his side, her small hands glowing faintly with protective magic. She had trained under Kale's guidance, her skills sharpened, her courage tempered by the dangers she had faced. The life she carried had awakened something within her, something extraordinary, a bond with Kale that defied fear. The rival Alpha leader stepped forward, a figure tall and imposing, radiating power that rivaled Kale's own. "You cannot hide here," the leader said, voice cold and commanding. "The child within her will belong to us. Surrender now, and perhaps we show mercy." Kale's eyes narrowed, and he stepped forward, placing himself between Alara and the threat. "You will not touch her," he said, voice like steel. "This child is protected, and so is she. Leave or face the consequences." A tense silence followed, broken only by the whisper of wind through the ancient trees. Then, with a roar, the rival clan advanced, and the sanctuary became a battlefield. Kale moved like a force of nature, every step precise, every motion calculated. His golden eyes glowed with power, commanding the elements around him, as if the forest itself obeyed his will. Alara followed, her protective spells weaving barriers of light and energy around them. She felt the warmth in her belly surge as the child stirred, responding to the danger, to the bond she shared with Kale, to the unspoken promise that they would survive together. Magic collided in bursts of light, steel rang against steel, and the forest echoed with cries of battle. Yet amidst the chaos, Kale's eyes never left Alara. Every movement, every strike was designed to protect her, to shield the life growing within her. In the midst of the fight, Kale and Alara found themselves facing the rival leader. Their power clashed in waves of energy, the ground shaking beneath them. Kale's voice rang out, commanding and fierce, "Yield. You cannot overcome what is bound by destiny." Alara felt a surge of courage and instinctively extended her hands, releasing a pulse of magic that enveloped the rival leader in radiant light. The figure staggered, caught off guard by the unexpected force emanating from the child within her. Kale seized the moment, moving with precise strength, subduing the threat without unnecessary harm. The rival clan, witnessing their leader's defeat, faltered. The storm of conflict slowed, and soon they retreated into the shadows from which they had come. Silence fell over the sanctuary, broken only by the gentle sound of the waterfall and the whisper of wind through the trees. Kale lowered his guard, breathing heavily, and turned to Alara. Her cheeks were flushed, eyes wide with adrenaline, but she stood firm, the glow of her protective magic fading. "You," he began, voice thick with emotion, "you are stronger than I could have imagined, not just in magic but in heart." Alara looked down at herself, unsure of how to respond. I could not have done it without you, she whispered. Without your guidance and without your trust. Kale reached out, cupping her face in his hands. You have my trust, my respect, and more than I have ever given to anyone. We are bound, Alara, by fate, by destiny, and now by the life you carry. The warmth in her belly pulsed once more, gentle but insistent. Alara realized that the child, their child, had been a silent partner in their survival, awakening at the precise moment they had needed it most. Tears filled her eyes as she placed her hands over Kale's, feeling the strength and sincerity in his grip. They sat together by the waterfall, the aftermath of the battle settling around them. For the first time, Alara allowed herself to imagine a future, not just of survival, but of hope, family, and partnership. Kale's hand rested on hers, steady and unwavering, a promise of protection and love. Days passed, and the sanctuary became a place of healing rather than hiding. Kale and Alara worked together, tending to their injuries and strengthening their bond. The life within her continued to grow, and with it, a sense of wonder and responsibility. They spoke often, sharing dreams, fears, and the quiet hope that the child would bring balance and peace rather than chaos. One evening, under a sky painted with the hues of sunset, Kale knelt before Alara. I have seen much in my life, he said softly, but I have never known a power like what we share. You and the child, you are a part of me now, in ways I cannot fully explain. Alara reached for his hand, feeling the weight of his words. And you are a part of me, she said. Even before I understood what this life within me meant, I felt it. You are my strength. They remained there, hand in hand, the air between them charged with unspoken emotion. For the first time, neither felt the need for words to fill the space. Their bond, forged in danger and tempered by trust, had become unbreakable. Yet even in this moment of peace, the future was uncertain. The rival clans, the prophecy, and the responsibilities of Kale's throne loomed on the horizon. But for now, in this hidden sanctuary, they allowed themselves to breathe, to exist, and to feel the depth of the connection that had begun in the forest months before. Kale's voice broke the silence, soft and steady. Whatever comes next, we will face it together. The child, the kingdom, and our bond, they are all part of something greater. We must honor it, protect it, and nurture it. Alara nodded, placing her hands on her belly once more. The warmth pulsed, steady and alive, a silent promise that their bond and their destiny were entwined. She smiled, a small, radiant smile that spoke of hope, courage, and the beginnings of a future she had never dared to imagine. The sanctuary, once merely a hiding place, had become a symbol of transformation, redemption, and the power of trust and love. Kale and Alara, Alpha King and Human Omega, had forged a bond that could withstand fear, danger, and uncertainty. Their journey was far from over, but together they had discovered something greater than survival. They had discovered each other.